Hello, everybody. This has been such a wonderful symposium so far. The discussion, the panelists, the presentations have been so rich and so educating and enlightening. And I think we are going to continue that same path with our next guest. We're in Austin, and our next guest really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. State Representative LaShawn K. Ford is a member of the Illinois House of Representatives, representing District 8. He assumed office in 2007. Ford has chaired a number of committees, including the Restorative Justice, Appropriations, Elementary and Secondary Education, and Appropriations Human Services Committee. He also founded Ford Desired Real Estate in Chicago. LaShawn is a former history teacher and basketball coach for Chicago Public Schools, licensed Illinois real estate broker, member of the Chicago and National Association of Realtors, board member of the Austin YMCA, board member of Chicago Circle Family Care, board member of the Austin Chamber of Commerce, founding organizer of Zawadi Youth Group, and member of St. Martin de Porres Catholic Church Parish Council and Finance Committee. What he does not do apparently is sleep. But without further ado, welcome State Rep LaShawn K. Ford. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Washington.
Man, I am so looking forward to this. I've been wanting to meet you for so long, and we finally had the opportunity to talk briefly backstage, and we can get into some things. But before we do that, I want to congratulate you. Tuesday was Election Day, and you were reelected. Is that correct?
Yes, I was reelected, and I want to thank all of the voters in the 8th District for reelecting me. I really appreciate the opportunity and the honor to continue to serve them as the state representative to fight for fairness and justice.
Yes, and the fact that you were reelected and you have been doing this work for so long is a testament to what your heart and passion is for the people that you serve. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. You have a beautiful place here where you're doing this forum, so thank you.
It is amazing, and it's right in Austin on top of that,
yes.
Right? So we got a lot to talk about. We get to talk about racial reconciliation. We get to talk about equity, community narrative, and youth empowerment. And we got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do it.
That's right. You know what? It's funny because that's the way it is when you're fighting for justice. You really get cut on the time to do it. So you got to make the best of it and get it out.
So I got the right person to talk to and get it cut then.
Yes.
All right, so let's get right to it. Racial reconciliation and equity. People look at them different ways. How do you define those two terms?
Well, one is education, recognizing that there's a need to make sure that there's a problem. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you're going to be able to have reconciliation is recognize. I'm growing up a Catholic, I'm a Catholic, and we talk about going to reconciliation. We talk about recognizing that you have sinned and that you want to do better. And so if we're going to have racial reconciliation, then people have to recognize whether you're black, brown, or white, that you have some transgressions that you need to get past.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then what about equity? How do you, when you say equity, what does equity mean to you?
Well, I'm a real estate broker too, so when you say equity, I'm like, yes, this is great. Got equity in this property, I could sell it and I could make money off of it, or I got some wealth that I could leave my children. I only have one daughter, but that's what people will see. They'll see equity that they could leave with someone. And I think that when you think about equity, that's something that's stored away, something that people have that others don't. And they got it because of inheritance. They got it because of privilege. And when you think of America and you think about how people have the haves and have nots, they have equity because they were privileged to have it. And there are some people with more equity than others. And in America and in the world that we live in, that equity puts people at an advantage. And if you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage. And in America, we have to recognize that there will never be equity in this country unless we have reparations, and we still will be short of equity. And so we have to make up for all of the years that Black people have been shut out, that have been held behind the gate, whether it's prison bars or whatever, while other people of other nationalities were out working and building equity. And so we know that there's a problem with equity. We know that that problem exists because some people have been given a head start in life for generations.
I could not agree more. I always look at equity as a balancing of the scales.
Yes.
Especially in a land of laws where, you have the just scales of justice in the United States of America. So I couldn't agree more. So let's go more specifically to Austin. What are some tangible things that we would see in your opinion if we were starting to move towards a space of equitable distribution in Austin? What would things look like?
Oh my goodness, if people in Austin had the opportunities, one, we have to first get to equality. Right now, the distribution of funds and services are not equal. So not only are we being shut out of an opportunity to get to an equitable state, we're still negative. We have to, as a community in Austin, I know we learned negatives and positives. The Austin community is in the negative by thousands. So even if there was some form of equality that came, we still have to recognize that there are years that we have to dig out of the ditch. So we need money in Austin. There's no time to waste when we constantly see vacant and abandoned storefronts that can create jobs and opportunities and increase the property values for people that have invested in these neighborhoods. So the only way is to make sure that there's true funding coming in these neighborhoods to support businesses, sort of like Lincoln in the Yards.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars over in Lincoln in the Yards. Now, that's what you call saying we want to do something for a community.
Absolutely. And speaking of we need money, I mentioned this to you backstage. I was there a couple Saturdays ago at the groundbreaking for Pop Courts on Chicago Avenue in Lockwood, which is they're re-energizing and revitalizing a vacant space to turn it into a space for community, celebrate businesses, social events, and such. And when you spoke to that very thing directly to those who have control of power levers. So can you talk about the importance of making your role and using your voice to advocate for those dollars that are needed in Austin?
As a state rep where we do everything to pass budgets in Springfield, we passed a $45 billion spending bill. That means that money is being spent on parks, police, fire, education, health and human services. And we also passed a $45 billion capital bill to do renovations to properties, to do road and bridge repairs. All of those could create jobs and opportunities for people, and it could support small businesses. So it's my job to make sure that people get their fair share of that. But it's also my constituents' responsibility to be ready and to fight for that money as well, because I'm one person, but the constituent base in Austin is pretty large, almost 100,000 people. We need all of the people in Austin, whether you're a property owner or a renter. We need you to fight for a better community and to fight for more revenue to come to the community.
So what does that fight look like from this side that would be most supportive of you, so there is a tandem and a teamwork and making sure the resources get to Austin?
Mr. Washington, that's easy. As the state representative, we started a construction task force for the West Side. That task force is an opportunity for the entire community to get behind this construction task force so that we can demand money from not only the state, but the city and other community philanthropists to come out and say that we want to support Austin, because we know Austin has been shut out of the mainstream economy and opportunities to have equal access to capital. We need equal access to capital, and we actually need more capital than other communities because we have more needs. And so it's simple. All we have to do as a community is come together and support people that believe in fighting for more resources for the community. They don't have to do anything but bring their ideas and let's stand together unified. When we try to make it more complicated than it is, that's where we have roadblocks. But all we need to do is say, yes, it's a fact. We need more dollars in Austin. We need more dollars to support education. We need more dollars to support families. It hurts my heart when I go knock on people's doors to get petitions and I see a house that has a roof falling down. The state should be working to help those families, to repair that roof, to fix that porch. It only enhances property values and it only helps increase tax revenue for the state, the city, and the county. So I think that people that's in the struggle, they should find someone that they believe in and support them, not just at the ballot box, but after the election, like now, and let's fight for more revenues so that we can make our communities better. This is where the fight starts, not at the ballot box, but after the election when you have given your vote to someone. Hold them accountable and stand with them. Don't just say, I want this, but be willing to fight for it.
That sounds a lot like a conversation we have in my household quite often. I agree with you fully.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
And so I want to shift gears a little bit because, again, we are focused on youth empowerment and community narrative. So earlier today, we started off with a panel that was all youth-led, all our next generation, as I like to call them. And they were asked at the end of their panel to name one thing or one type of resource or what do they feel is most needed in the community. One of the young men said a history lesson. And so that made me think about you as a former history teacher, but then also you have advocated for pausing and suspending the teaching of history classes right now in our schools. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, this water right here, we buy it because this water, we know it doesn't have lead in it. But we know that there are some places in the Austin community that have lead contamination, and we know that young people are forced to drink it because they cannot afford to buy water. And you should not have to buy water. It's a human right. The same thing goes with our history lessons in our schools. The history lessons that we teach our children, whether they're black, white, or brown, they're contaminated, they're biased, they're racist, and they make one person superior over others. And that's not right. And so my thought is, like many other people, is that we should put a moratorium on the current teaching of history in our schools, especially now that we know that what we're teaching our young people is contaminated. Why do we continue to do it? And so we believe that we should stop teaching the current standards and curriculum, teach civics until we could improve the standards in our public schools and improve the curriculum. There's the old saying of the miseducated Negro. Well, the truth is, America is miseducated because black people were not born enslaved. Some were because of the way they were enslaved, but we were kings and queens, builders of pyramids, long before we were taken to this country to build it. So 1619 is the date that we talk about. America did not get its independence until 1776. Well, during that time, black people helped make America strong and the country it is today. And therefore, we need to make sure that people understand the value of black people and that our contribution to this country is not the narrative that we learn in history books and that we see on the news every night where we're getting arrested, or the statistics of black people being locked away. We need real history so that we can have a real respect for one another. And if we could do that, I think that we could start with the healing of this nation.
Man, I almost thought we were in church for a second because I almost hit you with a preach, a wow, and an amen.
Amen.
So, I had this experience in my life once where I was having a conversation with an older white woman, and she wanted to know my story, and which is a normal question to ask somebody just to get to know them. But she said, Daryl, what I mean is you're educated, you have multiple degrees, you're articulate, you're not out shooting anybody up, you know how to run businesses.
You smell good?
You smell good, like all those things. But she looked at me like I was a black unicorn.
Yes.
Like, how could that be? And so I used it as a teachable moment, and she was really looking for the gems. And I told her, I said, you know what, you might find this hard to believe, but I'm the least amazing person I know.
Right.
I know so many amazing, wonderful black people who are the geniuses of the world. And so what I said to her, I said, the reason you feel that way and the perception has been because of the narrative you've been taught.
Yes.
I said, and what's even sadder than you having that narrative is that those who look and sound like me have been taught the same thing.
Yes. I was a teacher. I'm embarrassed by the standards by which I was directed to teach. Now that I know better, and I'm a legislator, that's why I know we have to stop teaching the current standards in our public schools and in the Catholic schools.
Absolutely. So now, this has to happen, right? And then we spoke earlier about fighting and supporting. So for this, how can we support you in this initiative that you're pushing for? What can we do?
Yes, so we have a petition that we started to ask that we halt the teaching of the current history lessons in our schools. And you can find that petition, or you can email me at repford@LaShawnFord.com. Once again, that's repford@LaShawnFord.com. And you can sign the petition. The democracy is easy. Just get involved and do what you can. You can sign the petition. You can share the petition. You could get people to speak up and agree to this concept that we need to make sure that the American people are educated, and that our history in America didn't start in 1776, what the president want people to believe. There would be no 1776 for this country had it not been 1619.
Absolutely. You know what? We had a big task, but I think we did it.
Thank you. One thing I have to tell you, that son-in-law, Jared Kushner, said that the president could help black people only if they wanted to be helped, if they wanted to work for it. He's worth $800 million, probably worth over $1 billion. And I'm sure it was all gravy for him, and he was fed that $800 million because he is who he is. If you had an opportunity to have a fraction of that, could you imagine the people that you can help?
Man, that's a whole nother conversation. That's man.
But those people really believe that it's that easy in life. I put on social media that Jared Kushner could never make it a day in black skin.
No, absolutely. He's too fragile in the skin that he's in.
Yeah, amen.
He's too fragile. So, and I think it's always also important for us to remember too that, and they mentioned this earlier, that privilege comes with stages, right? So for us to also remember that there are certain levels of privilege that we have, and that we're always checking our privilege and making sure that we're using our privilege on behalf of others. And so I want to thank you because of your seat and the voice that you have, because of your seat and your hard work, you are using your privilege on behalf of others who don't have that. So
that's a lesson for me. I do have privilege. Let's tell our black people that you do have privilege.
We all do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for this time. It has been enjoyable. State Rep LaShawn Ford, it is great to meet you, and I look forward to getting to know you more.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
All right, take care.
Thank you.